Welcome to the 2026-27 Alveary book videos for grades 7 through 9. I'm Carrie Forney, Executive Director of the Charlotte Mason Institute and a former homeschooling mom of 5 adult children. If you're new here, we're so glad that you have found us. I want to take just a few minutes to introduce to you the Alveary and the Charlotte Mason Institute, the nonprofit behind the Alveary Curriculum. The Charlotte Mason Institute, or CMI, began over 20 years ago as a gathering of educators passionate about Charlotte Mason's philosophy and practices. That annual conference is still a highlight of our year, and we'd love to have you join us. From those early conversations, the Alveary Curriculum was born over a decade ago. We saw the need, educators like you, needing a helping hand in implementing a Charlotte Mason education through lesson plans that support you when you're pulled in many directions and help you implement Mason's methods as you teach your students. We've grown significantly since those early years. CMI now offers various publications, training courses, certificate and graduate level for home and classroom educators, as well as school leaders, and support for co-ops and accreditation for Charlotte Mason schools of all sizes. Our Alveary curriculum is designed for and widely used in both homeschools and classroom settings, whether that classroom is your local Charlotte Mason co-op or one of the growing number of Charlotte Mason schools across the country. The curriculum and resources are written by a collaborative team that ensures quality and cohesiveness across subjects and grades. You'll meet a few of those team members in this video, but you can see our whole team on CMI's website. Now, let me show you one of the things that makes Alveary unique, our lesson plans. These lesson plans work alongside the books you're reading with your students. They're not just a list of assignments. They guide you through Charlotte Mason's methods with clear, practical steps for each lesson. Alveary Plus members also enjoy even easier planning with Syllabert, an online planner which has all your lessons loaded and ready to customize. This is what sets us apart: rich, living books combined with thoughtful lesson plans that do the heavy lifting for you. As a member, you'll also enjoy a private online community of fellow Alveary members where you can ask questions and gather inspiration. While we do offer most of our subjects individually in our store, membership is our best value. For $2.99, a family membership gives you access to every lesson plan for every grade, all subjects, 1st through 12th grade. This is especially helpful if you want to move a child up or down a grade in different subjects, combine students across grades, or switch to a different grade's lesson plans if your child has already read a particular book. Everything is at your fingertips. Please see our website for co-op and school pricing as well. So then, thinking about the fact that there's so many books, right, for each subject in each area, we won't have time to cover every book and subject included in Alveary this year. The video would be way too long. But we'll be highlighting books that represent the depth and breadth of what we offer, and you'll see images of most books on the screen. Keep in mind that our full course lists and book lists give detailed descriptions of each course and how each book fits into the curriculum. Beyond books, Alveary brings in website links, PDFs, our own exclusive member resources, and more to create a complete learning experience. For a full list of subjects and resources, visit the Alveary sample page on our website. So how do we go about choosing all these books? That's a good question. We don't always go for the most challenging language or the highest lexile level. Instead, we ask, what is the best book for this subject and these ages? We consider different genres and writing styles, diverse perspectives, and books that will truly engage young minds and hearts. Our goal is always a relational education, one that awakens children to delightful living through ideas in books, art, music, nature, and much more. If you're curious about the Alveary, we invite you to explore before you commit. On our website at alveary.org, you'll find free samples of our lesson plans and a free term of lessons to try. We want you to experience Alveary firsthand and see if it's the right fit for your family or classroom. For a more personal opportunity, we'd love to invite you to one of our open houses. It's a wonderful time to ask questions, meet other educators, and learn more about how Alveary can support your teaching journey. You can sign up for an open house through the link on our website. We look forward to meeting you soon at an open house or at one of our member Zoom calls or on our private social media platform. We're here to support you every step of the way. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, I'm Shannon Whiteside, Alveary Program Director, and I'm here with some of our collaborative team members, Meredith Donaldson-Clark, Olivia Bennett, Danielle Merritt-Sinceri, and Catherine Avery. We will be talking about grades 7 through 9 in this video. Let's begin with Bible. Charlotte Mason considered Bible lessons a critical part of a student's life. She wanted every day to bring new thoughts of God, new hopes of heaven, as she says in school education. From 7th grade through high school, students read through the Old Testament chronologically and will read 2 Samuel through 1 Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, selections of Psalms and Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. They will use the resource Old Testament Today, A Journey from Ancient Context to Contemporary Relevance by John Walton and Andrew Hill. This book will be used for several years as they read through the Old Testament and gain a deeper understanding of interpreting the Bible by understanding the context of ancient Near East. In our lesson plans, we also provide short videos Dr. Walton has exclusively created for Alveary students that talk through many of the topics in his book and highlight the particular books of the Bible the students are reading. Our lesson plans also provide other support and links, especially from the Bible Project. For New Testament, 7th through 9th grade students are reading the book of Acts. 9th grade students will also be reading the epistles of Galatians, Philippians, and Colossians. We are excited about a new resource called Introducing the New Testament by Mark Allen Powell. This will be used for many years as well. This book provides maps, pictures, and even art to help students navigate the world of the New Testament. High school students will also use a commentary, Luke for Everyone by N.T. Wright, which is a highly accessible introduction to verse-by-verse commentary use. Our Bible lessons also include readings about men and women from church history from this historical time period. For 2026 to 27, we are studying the time period of 1800 to 1900. In church history, the 7th through 9th graders will be finishing the second half of the book Renewal, the church that expands outward. Some of the people in the book include William Wilberforce, Sojourner Truth, and the missionary Hudson Taylor. Students will also read the biography of Charles Spurgeon by Arnold Dallimore. This biography provides an introduction to Charles Spurgeon, an influential preacher from England, often called the Prince of Preachers. It shows his life of faith, his personal struggles with depression, his humor, and his love for his family as he strived to preach the gospel so that all might hear. We are excited for students to also read the book An Honorable Heritage, the Pandita Ramabi's story in her own words. Pandita was a social reformer, an advocate for the emancipation of women, and a pioneer in education. In this fascinating book, she tells her testimony of being born into a privileged Brahmin caste in India and leaving it all behind to become a Christian. It is a fascinating read.
I can't wait to read that last book you mentioned, Shannon. I think it's such a fascinating way too that we see how church history, even though it's under the subject of Bible largely, really fills out students' understanding of history as a whole in the 19th century. So it's just a really fascinating glimpse of the curriculum really working together across the board. But staying with Bible, once a week, students also are reading, in addition to the New Testament and the Old Testament, the church history readings, they're reading about spiritual formation topics. So this coming year, 7th and 8th graders are reading Transformed by Truth, Why and How to Study the Bible for Yourself as a Teen. And this is just a relatable guide to help young people dig into the scriptures and learn the simple practices of observation and interpretation and application. And then 9th graders are reading God's Big Picture, which just gives a wonderful overview of the Bible and how all of the different books and pieces fit together as a whole. And it's been a staple and a favorite in our curriculum for many years and really sets the stage for a more in-depth study, which the high school students continue to get into.
Let's talk next about history. The history of our world has a lot of wonderful moments, and it also has a lot of dark moments. We believe when teaching students, a balanced approach is the best way to learn history. As Christian scholar Roland Wells states, honest history means more than merely telling the truth in factual terms, but also telling the truth in all its complexity and ambiguity. We want our students to humbly pursue a deeper understanding in their engagement with the past. Just as the people in the Bible were full of human frailty and blind spots, so were the people throughout all of history. We believe that when we approach history with honesty and an openness to seek the truth as best we can, students can be transformed in their hearts and minds as they enter into a dialogue with the people from the past and strive to understand their stories, their context, and their worldview. If we just imagine historical characters as one-dimensional figures, we will either make them out to be an idol or a monster. The only way we can love our neighbors is to know their stories, hear their joys and hurts, and show an interest in their lives as people created in the image of God. That is the power of history approached as a living subject. The ideas and people students read about from the past can affect them today as they process what it means to be an image bearer, what it means to love your neighbor, and what it means to be a part of the kingdom of God.
This year, we're studying 1800 to 1900 AD in U.S. and world history, and 100 BC through 350 AD in ancient history. Let's start with U.S. history. 7th and 8th graders have U.S. history twice a week, so we are able to study history using a variety of resources. For their spine, they read one volume of A History of Us by Joy Hakim. This volume deals with the times and events during 1820 to 1860. Through the use of engaging narrative, photographs, and primary sources, Hakim helps students get a feel for the U.S. during a time of westward expansion, railroad building, and industrialization. Students will also immerse themselves in this time period by reading 2 different historical fiction books. One of these books is Gold Mountain, which introduces students to the Chinese immigrant experience in the 1800s when thousands of Chinese workers came to the U.S. to work on the Transcontinental Railroad. In this book, a young Chinese girl disguises herself as a boy and takes her deceased brother's contract to work for the Central Pacific Railroad. This book helps students get a better understanding of Chinese culture, the hardships and discrimination Chinese people faced, and the hard work it took to create the Transcontinental Railroad. Another book that is part of the history curriculum is Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, The Story Behind an American Friendship. This book explores the Civil War era through the evolving relationship of these 2 highly influential men. It is a fascinating look into how real people grappled with the moral issues of the day. Students will also read A Year in the South by Stephen Ash. This true nonfiction account uses letters and diaries to tell the stories of 4 different people over the course of 1865. It gives the students a look into the lives of people who are maneuvering through a tumultuous change. It encourages students to see that Reconstruction was a complex time that didn't mean instant equality or peace.
For U.S. history, 9th graders will be reading Thomas Kidd's American History, Volume 1 and 2. Thomas Kidd is a distinguished professor of history and the associate director for the Institute of Studies of Religion at Baylor University. His books provide a lively, detailed recounting of the many different events taking place throughout the 1800s and 1900s. We will be using his book next year as an overview for history as well. To provide students an opportunity to get to know individuals from the time period, they will read The Narrative of Lunsford Lane. This was published in 1842 by Lunsford Lane himself and is his account of escaping slavery and helping his family escape as well. He does this with the support of people in his community who help him buy his freedom. Another one of these books is entitled I Am a Man, written by Joe Starita. This book is about Chief Standing Bear's fight for justice as he navigates the loss of his land taken by manipulation and coercion. Joe Starita uses primary sources to help the audience see many of the hardships that Chief Standing Bear went through, like the loss of his daughter and his brother, and how others came to fight for him and his people. We will be exploring more primary sources by reading selections from American Horizons, Volume 1 and 2, from sources like Andrew Jackson's Veto of the Bank of the United States to the Declaration of Sentiments. Students will get their hands on written and visual documents that will help them see firsthand what people in the 1800s were encountering on a day-to-day basis. Students will develop their historical thinking skills by using these primary sources.
Canadian families also have a stream of Canadian history that they can take as part of the larger history curriculum. For this upcoming year, we'll be studying the 19th century alongside the US students. And for Canadians, the 19th century was a formative time in Canada's history as the country transformed from a loosely connected group of British colonies to a cohesive confederation of provinces and territories called Canada. Students in grades 7, 8, and 9 will learn about major events of the period: the War of 1812, rebellions in Upper and Lower Canada, Canada's role in the Underground Railroad, the Confederation in 1867, the Northwest Rebellion, and the completion of the Canadian Pacific Railway. Grades 7 and 8 will use the spine text, The Story of Canada. While this book provides an excellent overview, students will also deepen their knowledge and relate to historical figures and events by reading several biographical and historical fiction works. One novel they will read, Elijah of Buxton, introduces students to the town and community of Buxton, Ontario, founded as a settlement for formerly enslaved people who had reached freedom in Canada, through the eyes of the narrator Elijah, the first free-born child who lived in Buxton. The lesson plans for this novel provide more detailed context for this historical novel with information about Buxton itself, now a National Historic Site in southwestern Ontario. Grade 9 students will study Canadian history together with the grade 10s. They will also read a selection of historical fiction and will learn about 19th century events through primary source material, including archival documents, archaeological artifacts, photographs, letters, and other writings. One book included is the anthology Early Voices, Portraits of Canada by Women Writers. Students will also read Adam Schultz's newest book, Vanished Beyond the Map, which recounts the author's quest to discover more about the Arctic explorer Hubert Darrell, who vanished in 1910. Darrell was widely known and hugely respected in his own day, but the mystery of his disappearance and the passage of time has reduced his legacy to a brief entry in the Canadian Dictionary of National Biography, at least until Adam Schultz came along. What I love about this book is that Schultz brings the reader along on his historical project, step by step, and we see what kinds of questions and steps are involved in recreating a historical narrative. What can we know for sure? How do we find out? And what can we still learn from an incomplete historical record? Some of you may have already read Tracy Mackenzie's book about history, for Little Book of History for New Historians. And if you have, you'll remember his image of that he borrows from C.S. Lewis about history as as like a Niagara Falls, and all you can capture from history is what you can hold in a tiny cup, and all the other events of the past are just lost to the period of time. I think what Adam Schultz does so well is he's trying to figure out, well, what do we need to do to try to get a little more in that cup? How can we trace some historical messages from the past and learn more about people who otherwise would be just forgotten completely?
Let's talk about world history. When we choose books, we follow Mason's advice about living approaches to learning. She said, "With this thought of a child to begin with, we shall perceive that whatever is stale and flat and dull to us must needs be stale and flat and dull to him, and also that there is no subject which has not a fresh and living way of approach." Mason's fresh approach to history was putting aside the kinds of books that provided only information about the past and replacing them with books that allowed students to live in the past and experience the sights, sounds, and daily lives of the people. Instead of summaries or overviews about different countries during this time period, we want students to get a better feel for a few places because it offers more opportunity to engage their imagination and develop an interest in that event or country. One such book is In the Shadow of the Alamo by Sherry Garland. She is an award-winning author who has contributed 30 different fiction books steeped in historical research. This book is about a 15-year-old boy named Lorenzo Bonifacio who was pulled into war by the Mexican government. His journey is filled with loss and triumphs and helps students see the Texas Revolution and the Alamo from multiple perspectives. Mason talks about getting to know our neighbors, and this book is a great way for students to learn some history about Mexico. Ninth graders will be reading A Little Book for New Historians by Tracy McKenzie. In the first term. For the second and third term, they will join the 10th and 12th graders in engaging with 2 other books that immerse them in the events of various places around the world. One of these books is titled Erebus by Michael Palin. Erebus is a book about exploration and mystery. Michael Palin's Erebus takes the student into the 2 of the most harrowing exploration trips ever recorded, the last trip being unsuccessful and leading to a mystery that still puzzles modern-day minds. The Erebus recounts what is known about the first ever explorations into Antarctica, the most isolated continent in the world.
Those books sound fascinating. I'm sure the students will be excited to be reading about history in such an engaging way. Let's talk about ancient history. 7th through 9th grade will be reading the same books. There's an extensive amount of material to draw from, as this time is filled with wars, transitions, and political power, the death and resurrection of the Messiah, and the rise of the Christian church. Our students will be using A Short History of Ancient Rome by Pascal Hughes. This book covers the rise and fall of the Roman Empire and will help us explore history because it's engaging and detailed. However, the part of the story that is not filled in by Hughes will be covered in The Witness of the Early Christian Women. This is an exploration of women from the New Testament to martyrs to poets and thinkers who lived in a time of great transition and tribulations. Lesson plans include further links and other resources, so students can get a sense for the material culture of the Roman world as well. Let's talk about citizenship. 7th through 9th graders will be continuing in their reading of Charlotte Mason's 4th volume titled Ourselves. We think this book is best read with your students so you can discuss it and chew on the ideas of what it means to be human and how to understand the way God has made us. Next year for Plutarch, we will be reading The Plutarch Project by Anne White to learn about the lives of Julius Caesar, Agis, and Cleomenes and the Gracchi. Our lesson plans provide extra support with intros, map work, and discussion questions to give you more confidence to teach Plutarch. We also provide a beginner's track for Plutarch. These lesson plans cover 2 terms reading the life of Publicola. There's more guidance and the readings are shorter for students new to this subject. We don't want you to miss the subject that Mason esteems so highly. She stated in her book, School Education, perhaps nothing outside of the Bible has the educational value of Plutarch's lives. For government, the 7th graders learn about the Constitution by reading the book, Your Rugged Constitution. We also include many links and articles and videos in our lesson plans to help students gain an appreciation for our Constitution and the freedoms we have in our country. In 8th grade, students study state or provincial and local government. There's not a book needed because lesson plans include links and PDFs as well as activities for students to learn about the representatives and laws in their own city and state. 8th graders also study a term of economics using the book Dollars and Cents, A Kid's Guide to Using and Not Losing Money. This book talks about the history of money, the first banks in America, and basic concepts of banking. Both 8th and ninth graders have a term of primary source readings about government, which tie into the historical happenings of the 19th century and the developments in political philosophy.
So turning to geography now, the U.S. geography course starts in 7th grade with Mapping the World with Art, which is a history of map making from the very earliest maps that are actually still in existence today. And they were drawn by the people in Mesopotamia on clay, and then it goes all the way to the explorers who navigated the polar regions. And these books include map drawing lessons that take a student step by step through the process of drawing maps of all countries of the world. And then they also spend one term reading historical geography, and they're using the book This Strange Wilderness, The Life and Art of John James Audubon this year. This is also a part of 8th grade, and the book is filled with beautiful images, and the author just tells about Audubon's travels around the U.S. to capture the images of American bird species. So in addition to this book, 8th graders also are studying U.S. geography in more detail, and they make maps of the states and do map drills and learn the rhyme and reason behind their shapes. With the book, Our States Have Crazy Shapes. And another book that the 8th graders are using to continue exploring U.S. geography is called Westward with Fremont. And this book tells about the treacherous journey that the photographer Solomon Carvalho took with the explorer John Fremont on his 5th expedition of discovery through the Rockies to the Pacific Ocean. And it's just a fascinating read that highlights scientific exploration and cultural encounters and the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. And then in 9th grade, the same thing happens with lots of map making. The lesson plans include lots of help with that and maps to fill in and whatnot. And but the focus in 9th grade is on how geography plays a role in history and politics. And Prisoners of Geography is the main book that we use for that. And it's been a favorite for many years as well in the Alveary.
There will also be a separate geography stream for Canadian students in grade 7 and 8. So Canadian students in grade 7 will learn geography alongside the US students with the book Mapping the World with Art. But when we turn to map exercises, there will be exercises for Canadian students based on Canadian geography using the Canadian Student Atlas. There's also a historical component to the geography class for grade 7. The Arctic loomed large in the imagination and exploration of 19th century geographers, scientists, and sailors. And so grade 7 students will learn about several Arctic expeditions to discover and map the Northwest Passage during this period by reading Pierre Berton's Exploring the Frozen North, part of his History for Young Canadians series. In grade 8, students will use Draw the Natural Wonders of Canada and Greenland to make a more detailed Canadian map and learn about specific bodies of water, landscape features, different flora, fauna. The map that they make by the end can kind of look a little like the maps of the early explorers, which were decorated with pictures of plants and animals and interesting features that were found. So they're quite a beautiful project to complete by the end. And then students in grade 8 are also reading Adam Schultz's Vanished Beyond the Map. The lesson plans, when they're doing that in grade 8 instead of in grade 9, will be different, since this course, the students are reading the book in order to learn more about the wider Arctic expeditions of the 19th century, how mapping the Arctic was accomplished during this period, and what made Hubert Darrell a remarkable geographer. Students will also come away from this book with a clearer understanding of how different subjects, in this case history and geography, can inform each other and provide a fuller shape of what was happening both in a particular place and a particular time.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition just to note the way that picture study and composer study and historical dance and handicrafts really all add to that picture as well. So, whether we're studying Vincent van Gogh in picture study, or Lilias Trotter, or listening to the comic operas of Gilbert and Sullivan, or even hymns that we try to correlate loosely with the time period, like Angels We Have Heard in High, that classic Christmas favorite was written during the 1800s. So that's going to be one of the hymns for this coming year. So I think that even though these are all different subjects, when you're looking at the course list as a whole, they round out the whole curriculum and give students an acoustic, a visual, and a hands-on experience of the time period we're studying, in addition to just extending their imaginations through what they read. And another example of that is architecture, where that is more built into the lesson plans themselves for 7th and 8th grade, but the 9th grade has a separate course, and the 9th graders are reading 50 Buildings You Should Know that gives an overview of architecture from 1800 to 1900 and different famous buildings that were constructed during that time. And then in another book that's an introduction to engineering is another just longtime favorite called Why Buildings Stand Up, that the 9th through 12th graders will be reading. So turning to English, for grammar and composition, we really love the Michael Clay Thompson books as our sort of spine along the way. So we're going through Paragraph Town in 7th grade, Grammar Voyage and Practice Voyage in 8th grade, and then Essay Voyage in 9th grade. And we just love the way that Michael Clay Thompson introduces grammar concepts and ideas about writing in context and explains them in an engaging way with examples from good literature and just the importance of knowing these things in order to communicate well. And then alongside the lessons going through these books, we round out our program with copywork and dictation. And for 7th and 8th grade, we actually create our own copywork and dictation books. And then grade 9 transitions to keeping a commonplace book. Obviously, students are continuing their daily written narrations. And then starting in 7th grade, we actually provide specific composition assignments as well, following Mason's pattern that we see in PNU exams. And so that gives students a targeted way to begin practicing different styles of writing and exploring the different ways to use words.
Let's talk a bit about literature and poetry. And as we've mentioned before, literature, history, and geography are all tied together. So readings from each subject are enriching and deepening the others. When it came to choosing books for rotation 3, we had so many period literature options than we've had in previous rotations. It was a bit of an embarrassment of riches for the people choosing the books. But when we were making the decisions, we went for a mix of genres. We included books that are maybe a stretch read for your students, and then other titles that are more immediately engaging. There is a struggle with the fact that a lot of novels in this time period are long. So we decided to choose a few longer books to focus on. The narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass is one, for example, and in 7th and 8th grade, students will read Little Women. In grade 9, the grade 9 students, along with the other high school students, will be reading Silas Marner. Students in grade 9 are building on their skills that have been developed through written narration to undertake more complex composition assignments. While on the surface, the plot of a book like Silas Marner is a straightforward depiction of 19th century British village life, it is also a novel which stretches the reader's moral imagination and shapes their ethical thinking. So composition assignments will ask students to do things like analyze characters, compare the characters' development during the 2 time periods of the novel, and also use events of the novel as a way to discuss ethical questions. Also, students will be reading quite a few essays and short stories which were getting published during this period. We're broadening our students' exposure to a variety of genres, including shorter writings from authors such as Pushkin, Tolstoy, O. Henry, and others. As far as poetry, the students in grades 1 through 8 will be using a beautiful anthology of American children's poetry for their base, and then also focusing on specific poets. All grades will enjoy reading poetry by the famous Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore, and grade 7 and up will read a poetic biography of Gertrudis Gomez de Avellanda, a famous Cuban abolitionist and writer. Grades 7 and 8 also enjoy a short biography and extra poetry by Pauline Johnson, who was one of Canada's famous poets. And grade 9 students will lean into their ancient history rotation by spending 2 terms with the Aeneid. Students will also continue reading Shakespeare, and this year the play choices are The Tempest, Henry IV Part 2, and The Winter's Tale. And as always, the lesson plans will provide support for reading and interpreting Shakespeare with your students.
Let's finish up with science. Mason talks about the need for students to grasp that science is a process that develops and changes over time. It's the story of our struggle to understand creation and search for truth, and that happens within the context of the human story. So over the course of grades 7 and 8, we use the Story of Science books, which are a set of 3, that chronologically tell the story of how we began with stargazing and progressed to the eventual mind-bending concepts of Einstein. Your lesson plans provide you with teaching support, encouragement, discussion help, supplemental links, and more. Along with lab activities and nature study, this is a really rich and living science program that encompasses a complete physical science course enhanced with earth science, history, politics, and more. As students begin to transition into high school, you'll want to learn more about our flexible high school science program outlined in the linked high school science intro video. We make recommendations to provide a robust foundation and help keep as many doors open as possible, but it's ready to be fitted to your students' needs. Within that flexible program, we recommend chemistry for our 9th graders. This text builds upon the introduction students learned in grades 7 and 8 and provides an excellent foundation for both biology and future citizenship. If you're curious about what place a textbook has in a Mason education or why we're recommending chemistry before biology or physics, check out our articles linked below on those topics. Your lesson plans for high school chemistry provide teacher support, discussion help, a complete video companion, and access to an experienced teacher to help with any questions. Your custom lab book breaks down your supply list by lab and guides the student through activities to help them observe what they're reading about in the text. But maybe your 9th grader is still looking for their personal connection in science, or maybe you'd like them to build their math skills before diving into disciplinary science. We also have 4 elective options open to our 9th graders. Botany, Advanced Nature Study, and new this year, Food Science and Intro to Engineering provide explorations into a wide variety of special topics. As with all of our high school science courses, these lesson plans incorporate history, culture, and citizenship for a complete Mason science education.
I hope you are excited about all the book choices. We are excited for your students to experience them as well. As we said at the beginning of the video, if you have questions or just want to connect, feel free to DM us on social media or send us an email. We're here to support you every step of the way. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Alveary. We're excited about the year ahead and hope you'll join us in this journey toward delightful living.